This is what our country and our world really needs, is for people who have this passion to go fix things.
Your hosts are here, Sammie and Michelle. By the end of this podcast, you'll know them well. Adulting, navigating the journey of life. Careers to relationships, pain and strife. Put down the rule book, rethink the status quo. If there's another direction you wanna go, find purpose, passion and mastery in all that you do with Status Post Adulting.
Hey Status Post Adulting fam, this is Sammie
and Michelle
and Areeb,
and we are doing our very first interview.
Yay!
Woo! We're going to be talking to Areeb, who is the co-founder of the company Glacier, which is a robotics company that works with recycling. Alrighty, now welcome to our first interviewee, Areeb. Hey Areeb, how you doing?
Hello, Sammie and Michelle. I am so excited and so honored to be your first interview guest. This is a really cool opportunity.
It's probably a highlight of your career.
I would say this is right there at the top. I've done some things, but being on a podcast with you two, top notch.
So Areeb, since everybody who is listening to our podcast doesn't know you as well as we do, why don't you give us a little bit of your background? Specifically, since we're talking about your career trajectory today, how did you end up in engineering? Is it something that you knew you wanted to do since you were younger?
Not really. I always enjoyed math, science, building things. Like a lot of kids, I was really into connects and puzzles and all of that sort of stuff. I think that was probably the basis for what got me into engineering. Really enjoyed my math classes, really enjoyed the basic sciences we learned. But then I guess when college time came and I got no direction from my parents besides to be a doctor, it was mostly a question of what do people who are good at math and science do? And the answer, so far as I understood, was engineering. So I took a stab at that and kind of explored.
I think that's really interesting, Areeb, but how did you end up choosing your field in engineering?
Yeah, kind of by accident, to be honest. I came to Cornell, I got into the engineering school just as an engineer and didn't really know what that meant, to be honest. I didn't know the types of engineering. They had you pick an intro to engineering class, and I showed up to the registration looking at the class list, and I was shocked that there were so many types of engineering. I didn't know what mechanical or civil or chemi and all these things were. And I was looking for something that was just like, hey, generalist engineering, like here, learn about all of the other types, figure out which one you like, and then pick from there, which makes sense. You would expect a school to offer that. They don't. It turns out that I mistakenly chose a major called operations research because I got confused by the blurb for the class description. It sounded like something that was just like, this will show you all of the parts of engineering and you will pick one. And it turns out nobody knows what operations research is. It's like business math, but I picked into that one and enjoyed it and then stuck there. I learned computer science along the way because that's just kind of a prereq for all engineers. And that was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed just building things in virtual space. And that was how I got started on my career as a software engineer. Just kind of stumbled upon it, to be honest.
Yeah, and I totally can relate to that because we grew up in Michigan. We had some idea of what engineers were in relationship to like the auto industry, but as far as the real potential of what engineering would become, we had no idea.
I really wish someone had told me. It would have been very easy for me to be like, oh yes, software engineering, that's going to be huge. We should do it. But again, there's not a lot of guidance on this, and people are always like, oh, just do what you like the most. And so definitely got lucky because I came out of, Cornell in 2013, and that was right as like all of these like big Silicon Valley companies were blowing up. That was as Uber was coming up. 2013, Uber was just being born. Lyft was just being born. Facebook was there, but had like IPO'd a year earlier. It was the beginning of this big tech wave. And so I definitely got lucky in terms of my timing and how valuable the skills I learned in college turned out to be.
So then was your plan to go to one of these big tech companies?
Even when I was a senior year, I didn't know I wanted to be a software engineer. I actually applied to be a consultant as well. I was trying to follow in my older brother's footsteps. I was like, oh, I should do what he did. That seems fun. Turns out consulting companies did not like me and didn't give me any job offers. Whereas this little known company, Facebook, they did. So for me, it was really just like taking the job I was offered. And that's kind of how I got started post-college.
So with that, Areeb, how did you choose to leave a comfortable position with Facebook and end up striking on your own to found?
Nice word. You do find and found at the same time.
Glacier.
It's a long-ish journey, but I think the crux of it was that I was at Facebook and you kind of sit in this big room and you have this huge team of engineers and data scientists and PMs, and they're all working to make this like B2C marketplace. And it's pretty easy to look there and be like, wow, that's a lot of brain power being spent on a not unimportant, but certainly not top priority problem that our society needs to be working on. There are a lot of things out there. I mean, our whole generation is really, really gung-ho about doing something about climate change. But then you look at how we're spending the bulk of our days and like the bulk of our brain power on what we do at work. That to me was not satisfying. And so that was kind of the kicker. I wanted to go find a way that I could spend my, 40, my 60 hours a week working on something that actually in my heart mattered. And that was, I think, the first thing that kind of got me out of my shoes at Facebook.
I know that you didn't just jump out there without having any idea of what you'd want to do. I know you had like a couple things on your mind. Mm-hmm. How did you go about that? Like with your final year at Facebook, trying to figure out what would be the most optimal thing that you'd want to work on?
Yeah, so I consider myself very lucky to have been given this opportunity where I was at a job that I enjoyed and I was having a good time there, but I also knew I wanted to leave and wanted to work on something else. And so I found myself basically saying, okay, I want to go start a company. That was a personal choice, but what is it going to be in, and how do I pick something that will actually work and will actually deliver impact on this move I want to make? And I had this opportunity to basically spend a lot of time while I worked at Facebook exploring this question. So I spent maybe 8 months while I was there working, 8 hours a day, but then I would spend 3 hours or 2 hours a night just kind of exploring, seeing what opportunities are out there and what made sense. And I looked into a lot of spaces. I ended up in recycling, but before I picked recycling, I looked into the grid, right? Like how does your utility company get power to your house and how can that be optimized? I looked into desalination, a whole plethora of spaces that do need people to work on them. And basically just looking for the right match for me.
So you knew that you wanted to do something good for the world. You had narrowed it down to, it sounds like something that had an environmental impact. Mm-hmm. And then you spend a couple hours after work doing some research and trying to figure out exactly what was a good fit.
Yeah, exactly that. And I would talk to people I had in my network. It's amazing, within your friends or your friends of friends, you always know someone who is relevant to like some random question. I didn't even realize, but I had a friend who worked at PG&E, which is the utility company out in the Bay. I had a friend who worked there. It was really great to talk to her and kind of learn the inner workings of that company. And I got to do that over dinner, catch up with a friend, learn some stuff, but I never had to quit my job and take the risk and put on the time pressure on myself to figure something out. Taking time to learn a little bit more about the problems you care about, I think was kind of that luxury.
What was it about recycling that made you want to pursue that instead of some of these other things?
There are problems that need fixing, and then there are problems that I can address as a software engineer with 5 years of skill. And it was about finding the intersection. Where is a problem that I think needs solving and I can actually do something about? Desalination is a great example where this didn't work. The problem is clear. We are running out of water. We saw this in South Africa. We're seeing it in LA, right? Water is becoming scarce and we're kind of running out of our reservoirs. We live on a planet that's 97% water, but we can't drink any of it. So here's a future state, right? Let's get past that problem. And I talked to professors who study this stuff, and I talked to engineers who worked on it. And the truth is, at this point in time, there's really nothing a software engineer can do with like that particular skill set to really advance that space, or at least not that I discovered. What we need is chemies and material science engineers, PhDs, to figure out the science of desal. And so that wasn't a space for me. Right? It didn't work out because that's a problem that, yes, we need people solving, but I personally couldn't have the biggest impact I could have on that space. Recycling, on the other hand, that did. It really matched up with, here's a thing that needs fixing, but also like, here's my skill set, here's what I'm good at. And I was able to find a way for me to actually apply my skills and get that impact, and that was really exciting for me.
So you ended up choosing to focus on recycling, which makes sense. Obviously, that's a big space. You founded Glacier, but let's talk a little bit more about what does Glacier actually do?
So I founded Glacier 2 years ago. We make robots for the recycling industry. There's a lot I can tell you about that, but the basic thing you should know is that when you put your recycling into the trash can or the recycling bin and a truck comes and takes it away, they take it to a facility called a MRF. It's a materials recovery facility, not to be confused with a Smurf, but they sound similar. And this facility's job is to sort apart everything you put in that bin and pick out everything that you shouldn't have put in that bin. So that's where I saw the opportunity. Basically what we do is we build technology to improve those systems, right? We want to make the recycling industry stronger. We want to make it more technologically robust so that it can be a stronger industry. and can actually deal with all of the problems that we are having as a society because we collectively don't know how to handle our waste.
Yeah, I mean, okay, one thing is once we moved to the Bay Area, I will say I was a lot more aware about trash.
Yeah, in Michigan, we think about trash and recycling very differently.
Mm-hmm.
Though I will say in Michigan, they give you 10 cents per can.
Yeah.
So until I left Michigan, I remember the first time I saw someone throw away a Coke can, I was shocked.
Yeah, literally.
I was like, that's 10 cents.
Free money.
And I just don't, maybe we're just in a different place in our life. But yeah, in Michigan, they made it real easy to recycle cans.
When we moved to the Bay Area, at least trash is very different here. There is composting, there is recycling. When we live in San Francisco, you can compost the same way that you put out your recycling and your trash. So I think there is a little bit more awareness around trash. Even with that, how did you figure out what exactly within the space of recycling needed to be done?
Yeah, I mean, like, you start with the problem, right? Like, we all can kind of look around at what we're throwing away, and you're taught this from a young age, right? Like, it's bad to throw stuff away. And then you see the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, right? Which is this massive island out in between California and Hawaii of just, like, plastic and, like, stuff humans have thrown or, like, lost to the ocean. The astounding fact, fun fact, not fun fact for Earth Day, is that every minute we dump one garbage truck full of plastic into the ocean.
Oh my
no.
Per minute.
That's crazy.
Oh my God.
Which is not good, and that's like I said, it's a problem with our infrastructure. We have not thought as a society about how do we deal with all this stuff we're consuming. Every time you go to the store, even if you're buying a reused water bottle, it comes in a box, and that box has to go somewhere. And we haven't thought and we haven't solved those problems. That's kind of the big space that needs work.
And when I think about recycling too, I know sometimes I'm throwing out my recycling and I'm like, I should wash off this oily grease off this recycled thing. And do you know what are these things that are going into the recycling that are causing problems?
Yeah, I mean, as an industry, right, like, we as consumers have this belief that, like, this item has that triangle on it, therefore it's recyclable. That's not true.
Well,
I'm
already here.
Sammie's like, wait, the number's important?
When manufacturers put that triangle on, they mean two things. One, they mean to say, this is made of stuff that could be recycled, but really they're just trying to trick the consumer into believing that it's okay that I buy this package because it's recyclable and it's going to be solved. So if you have a plastic box and you're in Kansas, that's not going to be recyclable. Even if it has that triangle on it, it's not. Plastic water bottle, sure. If you're in California and you have a plastic bag, sure. But generally, wherever you are, it's going to depend your location, who processes your recycling, and what sort of thing it is, if it is or is not recyclable. And it's really annoying, right? Because you as a consumer, you all thought like, oh, cool, it's got the triangle. I've done my part. But this system has been built up in a way that makes that very hard for you to be right. And I still struggle with what to put in the bin today. And I've been in this space for 2 years. Plastic bags, for instance, those are only recyclable in San Francisco, and only the white or clear plastic bag. So like a green, thick plastic bag, that's not recyclable here.
Oh, I didn't even know they were recyclable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to lie. I thought it being green made it more likely to be recyclable.
It is very confusing. And again, it depends on the item and the location and, frankly, the time of year. Because it's all about business on the back end. Somebody needs to make a profit off of this thing you're giving them. And if they can't, they're not going to.
I think that's a really important point, because most people were taught not to litter, we're taught not to pollute or create pollution in the environment, but there's still a lot to know and understand. And the truth is that it is hard. When I tried to be a lot more intentional about my recycling, I was Googling a lot more, and it was still hard to find the right answers. And almost the best way to quote unquote recycle is to just try to use less of those things. But at the end of the day, from the moment you purchase it to the time it gets to the MRF, is what you told me it's called, which stands for, you finish my sentence.
No, you got this, Juice.
I actually have no idea. I never listen when you say what it stands.
Materials?
Energy?
No, it's an E.
Environment?
It's MRF.
MR. Recycling?
Close.
Facility.
Yeah, you got 2 out of 3. It's Materials Recovery Facility, because they recover materials from our waste stream.
Oh, that's different than where your waste goes.
If you put stuff in your black trash can, as we have in San Francisco, that goes straight to the landfill.
Okay.
If you put it in the blue trash can, it goes to a MRF.
Oh, got it.
And the MRF picks things out of it that are valuable.
Okay, and the robot you'd be building with Glacier would work at the MRF.
Exactly.
Got it. And then, okay, quick question just on the logistics of this robot. How does it determine what
How
plastic
does
is
it
okay?
work? Is
Yeah.
the question.
Can you explain your robots to me? The simplest analogy, I guess, is when you upload a photo to Facebook, the greatest company. It does that thing where it's like, hey, is that Sammie? Hey, is that Michelle?
Mm-hmm.
It uses what's known as computer vision to identify things in that photo and say, that's a face, that's this person's face.
Oh.
We use the same thing, but we use it for trash. And so we say, here's a bunch of stuff that like ends up in the waste stream. I'm going to teach this computer to recognize that plastic water bottle. And we just do that and train it on everything. So now it knows what a bottle is and what a can is and what cardboard is and all that stuff. And all of a sudden it knows. And the same way that you as a person, right? If you're a baby and I show you a plastic water bottle, you don't know that's a plastic water bottle the first time you see it, but you see 100 of them, you see people drinking out, you start to draw those connections. We do the same thing, except we can teach the computer to do it instead of ourselves.
That's
Okay,
much
got
less
it.
creepy than Facebook.
Yeah.
Knowing what all my family members look like.
Yes.
Or not Facebook, just the internet as a whole.
It's just Facebook. I've been there. I can tell you.
Google Photos, etc.
Right. So it's like face recognition technology for plastics.
For trash.
For trash. Wow,
Yeah.
that's great. I mean, that's really great. When approaching something like, okay, you're trying to do something that's good for the environment or something virtuous, but at the same time build a profit, like how do you even go about thinking about that?
Yeah. And actually, for me, it wasn't so much about building a profit. I think it was about utilizing how our system works. And our system in America is fueled by capitalism, right? I know a lot of like our generation has this like demeanor towards capitalism that's very negative, but the reality is capitalism is just a tool that basically takes money and like puts it towards growing some business or growing something that a company does. It just so happens that a lot of our capitalism in this country is used for pretty standard or malicious things. But as a mechanism, as a tool, right, it could totally be used for good. It could totally be used to build things that our society needs, right? So you can look at like solar panels. The reason solar panels are doing so well is because capitalism, right? They've built an energy source that can compete on a dollar value with what typically is used to turn on a light bulb. So you look at Tesla, which is a really profitable company, but they are orienting capitalism towards let's get people off of gas in their cars. And so it's just about finding ideas like that. You do that, you utilize capitalism to do something good, you find the right way to do it, you will get money off of it. But that's not really the point. The point is to make change and to use what tools we have built in our society to get that to happen.
What I love about that, Areeb, is that you're setting up a business that if somebody took it over tomorrow with a different intention, they're still going to be doing good for the world.
Exactly. I think that's one of the things my co-founder, Rebecca, and I talk about is how do you know when a company is actually doing good? Well, let's say you took the monopoly man, you put him in charge, and all he wants to do is make money. Will your company still be doing good? And if you set up the company properly, then that is the case for a lot of things you can build. And that's kind of what we got with Glacier is if someone took over and just wanted to make money, well, the way they would do it is they would keep selling robots that keep improving our recycling infrastructure. And all of a sudden, we just get better at recycling as a society, even if there's no mission orientation to the company anymore.
I like what you say, too, about how you're taking capitalism, you're taking this money that's out there floating around looking to support different companies, and you're channeling it to something that's good. If another person makes a food delivery startup tomorrow, like we complain that there's 10 of them in the world, but the truth is that somebody's doing it and they're going to put money into it. But if you want to do something that has a specific mission attached to it, or even just something that you're passionate about, there's also a way to tap into capitalism and make that work for you as well.
Yeah, definitely. And that is, I think, the point. We want to both get money that is out there to be invested into something, right? Whether it's a crypto token or it's a delivery app, we want to get that money that would go to something else and put it into something that does need help for the climate. And we also want to give people out there an opportunity, right? If you're an engineer coming out of college and you want to join a company, well, you're going to look to the Facebook, to Google, to Uber, all these big name companies, but nowhere on that list is a company that helps climate change. And I would love to change that. I would love to see the top 10 companies have a list of 5 companies that you join and you're actually positively impacting our environment instead of just doing nothing with it.
Yeah, Areeb, that'd be amazing. With all that said, I think a lot of people are in a position where they want to do something that would be impactful, or they want to do something on their own. What kind of steps financially did you take to make you feel comfortable with the idea of leaving your job?
Yeah, I mean, it is certainly a risk, right? I have not taken a paycheck for 2 years, and that's a hard thing to do. I do not for a second pretend that I'm not coming from a place of privilege where I have the savings to be able to float me for long enough to be able to experiment with something like this. The good news is that's not necessarily always the case. There are plenty of people who leave, their safe jobs and they only have a few months of float they can get by on. But this society that we live in is very, I think, supportive of ventures like that. With enough work and enough vision, you can actually turn your dream into something that can sustain you. Maybe not as luxuriously as when you were at your big company, but it can sustain you using some funding you get from, investors who care about the space or whatever it might be. For me, it was about basically doing some math and saying, okay, like this is how long with the savings I have, I could go without taking a paycheck. Is it possible for me to get to a point where I can make some actual impact, or at least discover if this is a good path to go on before that end point on my timeline hits. So I did that math, took a gamble, and we're still seeing if it's going to pay off.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big topic on our podcast is finance and financial independence. And I think really one of the biggest reasons that living at your means and saving money is so valuable is because it gives you these kind of opportunities to do things that you're really passionate about. And I know for you, Areeb, it wasn't just only the money that you have saved up, but I know you guys also made deliberate lifestyle changes, right? To help build up that savings as well. Yeah, I mean, definitely. When you are no longer making money, you're a little bit more frugal when it comes to the random expenses. I do think that between, my wife Charmaine and I, we did not sacrifice the things that really matter to us because we didn't want to just give up everything we enjoyed about life for this mission, but rather it's really easy to find things that you're spending too much money on. It's really easy to be like, oh wow, we went to brunch 4 times this month and that was totally fine. And we could have just made pancakes at home and had a great time with our friends. Yeah. It's those type of things you can take a second look and you can actually trim quite a bit of your spending down. And we certainly did that. And it's definitely helped us make it a little bit easier to be in this financial situation.
So Areeb, if I'm sitting at my W-2 job, I have a couple ideas that I'm thinking about, or I have something that I know I'm passionate about, what would you say to that person who's considering quit their job, take on a side hustle, etc.? What message would you have to that person? People in our society, especially those people who have the ability to take some time and explore these side passions, you absolutely should. This is what our country and our world really needs, is for people who have this passion to go fix things that we see that are wrong. Maybe it's 2 hours a night. Maybe it's just the time you would have spent watching Bridgerton, and you spend that instead learning about some problem that you care about and doing something about it. But it's absolutely crucial that we do that as people. If all of us actually put in some time to work on these problems, I just think our society could do so much, and I can see a world where we really do hit that 10-year climate change mark and hit it with a place where we've solved this. We've gotten this done. We have the ability. We have so many people out there who care about this, and we just need to see that reflected in the actual stuff that's being output by society. And I think the first step is being brave enough to take some of your downtime, take some of your free time, and put it into that passion work that you have kind of lingering in your mind. I really love that, Areeb. I think you've given us some really great advice, and I definitely feel super inspired from our conversation here today. Areeb, at the end of our podcast, we always do an adulting versus status post-adulting. So taking maybe something you did when you were younger or a hack that you learned as an adult. Do you have an adulting versus status post-adulting? Yeah, I think one of the mantras I read on Reddit at some point in my life and I really liked was very simple. It's the concept that if it's going to take you 5 minutes to do, just do it now. So for instance, it's nighttime and you're going to bed and your jacket is on the couch and you're I'll put it away in the morning. No, if it's going to take you 5 minutes to do, just do it now, and all of a sudden your jacket's put away and you wake up in the morning and there's no jacket on your couch, and you do that all the time and you solve so much procrastination that I think makes my house really clean, at least. I will say too, Areeb, knowing you for 10 years, this is how you live your life. Whenever I need to force myself to do something, or I'm sitting down and I'm talking to Sammie and I'm I have to write this email or I have to reach out to this person, or I'm worried about what these people will think, she always says, like, our mantra is almost, what would Areeb do?
Aw.
Which our Pope would love. And the answer is always, like, he would just do it. Whatever it needs to be done, send the email, write the bill, I don't know, whatever it is that I'm procrastinating on.
Call the person.
Write the bill? Am I a senator?
I'm writing
Write the bill. Post a card.
But yeah, so I think that that's not only just good advice, but definitely something that I see that you do in action every day.
Well, it means so much to me that you think of me so highly that you replace me with Jesus in your life.
So that wraps up our interview with Areeb. Thanks so much to our Status Post-Adulting family for taking a listen. Sammie, what'd you think? Michelle, I found Areeb's story so inspiring. You know, he had a great job, he had a comfortable life, but he was able to see beyond that, and he really considered how utilizing his skills in another place would be so beneficial for the entire world eventually. I also like how he talked about how they prepared financially. A lot of us have bigger goals, bigger dreams, and by not spending on frivolous things and by saving our money, we create a reservoir so that in the future when we want to do something really big or something more risky, we have that safety net. I agree, Sammie. Everyone is at a different place in their life, in their career, in their financial journey. What I like about Areeb's story is you can see how he started to prepare himself, both in doing a little bit of extra work to figure out how he could affect change in a meaningful way, and also how to give himself a little bit of a cushion so that he could take this risk, but it didn't have to be as much of a risk as putting everything on the line depending on the success of his company. Yeah, that's so true, Michelle. Overall, I think it was a really great episode. It was really inspiring, and I think it gave a lot of real actionable things that people can do today to start moving towards whatever their dreams are. So that's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. And if you have any questions or comments or tips for our future podcasts, you can email us at statuspostadulting@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Instagram at statuspostadulting. Yes, exactly, Sammie. Quick shout out to one of our listeners, Melissa. She said, #statuspostadulting. In 1 week, she sent in her passport before it expired to be renewed, made an appointment for the DMV, set up an appointment to get her car registration and inspection done, did her taxes, and started to do some career planning. She said, I'm pooped, but at least now I feel like I have some control over my life now. We love to hear it. For anybody else who finds himself having a status post-adulting moment, we'd love to hear more about it. And speaking of Instagram, we have seen people sharing Sammie's interview with Bigger Pockets, sharing different parts of our podcast on social media. And so we do love to see it. Definitely tag us if you do share it in our stories. We love to see that you're listening, and we find that a lot of other people are able to find our podcast that way. That's right, Michelle. And be sure to join us next time as we put down the rulebook and rethink the status quo.